All right, we're going.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
Really great. What are you drinking?
It is a lager from a brewery here in Denver. Great,
Let me see it.
hold on, Great Divide Brewery.
Can you show it in the thing? In the camera?
Yes, hold on.
Oh.
What are you drinking?
Oh, wow. What am I drinking? I'm drinking a coffee in my self-stirring mug.
Oh, yes,
Yes, you literally can press this little button here and it stirs for you on its own. So great.
that is morning
So
time.
what time is it over there?
What's that?
Time is it over there? It looks so bright in
Six.
the background.
Yeah, 6:30. Doesn't get dark here till about 8:30.
Okay. I just realized I was wearing the wrong glasses. I'm such an old lady. I got different glasses for the computer versus, when I walk outside versus when I read a book. Oh my God.
I just have one for everything.
Oh, you are
I usually
so
wear
blessed.
contacts.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Um, all right. So today it's our first topic today. We've got a nice little 30-minute segment here. I'll put on my timer so that we make sure we get to time because I know how we can babble.
Yes.
I know we've got the gift of gab here. Um, so what's today's topic?
I think we were going to be talking about, was it like men and becoming just kind of weaker and less masculine, I guess would be a better way to describe it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Men.
Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm. I
maybe.
know we spoke briefly about this yesterday. Or maybe we spoke actually sort of really intensely. But yeah, I do think that over time, um, as we've kind of seen in the media, in Hollywood, and I would say, even in my day to day, I have seen what is typically, um, you know, I've seen many men who have been very masculine um, change and be something different. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I
yeah,
can.
I have. Yeah, I have. And I would sometimes tend to say that that's a good thing, and then also sometimes tend to say like, "What the hell is going on here?" Um,
Yeah, I will definitely agree with that. As a man, um, I can definitely feel the pressures towards what exactly my behavior is supposed to be have shifted pretty dramatically, pretty quickly.
yeah. Can you give me a little bit more context with that? Can you
Well,
give me some
yeah,
examples, or why do you feel this way, or what you've seen?
well, I kind of know where it comes from because it's all been part of this effort to stamp out gender inequalities and sexism and things like that. But in the process of doing that, well, I should backtrack. The way they've kind of went about doing that is identifying men as the problem, um, and then basically demanding that men change this, and this. But in the over the course of, because this has been going on for 10, 15 years gradually. I don't know, maybe even since the 90s, but because I remember a lot of this stuff going on with the 90s too. But then it kind of all seemed to disappear, fade away with 9/11, and then came back. I don't know, during the Obama years, but um, it's kind of morphed into masculinity itself is toxic instead of like certain things, like maybe growing up, I was certainly taught not to express my feelings or things like that. Like vulnerability is seen as weakness, stuff like that. Like that is certainly like toxic behavior that you might want to change. But when you start identifying masculinity wholesale as toxic and it's never spoken of as positive, then it kind of, these men, especially like teenage boys trying to figure out how to fit in the world, or adolescents, if they're being told that like all these masculine things are toxic, then they don't want to be toxic, so they want to be whatever this kind of gender neutral thing that's kind of emerging.
Hmm.
It's weird to me, but I'm sure normal to people 15 years younger than me. So we're middle aged now. It feels weird to say that.
Oh, no, no, no. I am not middle aged. Thank you very much.
How
Do not put me in that category.
many more years do you got?
Huh?
So how many more years you got?
Quite a lot.
Okay.
Um, but I think that's interesting. Okay. So you feel that, if I can sort of paraphrase again, you feel that um, the narrative shouldn't be that masculinity is toxic,
Yes, I do not
and
feel.
that the narrative should actually be aspects of masculinity, or the way in which we've seen masculinity, certain aspects of it are toxic.
Yeah, because I mean, these some of these traits and stuff, like for example, withholding your feelings and not communicating and stuff like that. Like that's kind of lumped in with like I don't know toxic masculinity, but I've dated women that display those traits too. So what is it when they do it? Like it's not toxic when they do it, but it's toxic when men do it. It's
That
like
kind of sounds like that argument when especially white people, when they say um to like a black person or a brown person, well, you're being racist too.
yeah. Well, no, I agree. Like if I feel like if gender norms are going to change, or well, they are changing, but I feel like the way it should be done is there are certain things that women are encouraged to do to kind of play into the way gender norms are, and they need to kind of revolt against that in their own way, and then men need to kind of revolt against it in their own way. But I don't think you need to identify things such as masculinity itself as toxic. Or if you're gonna just refer to toxic masculinity all the time, you need to start defining what are positive masculine traits, because I've never heard that talked about. Like it almost seems as if masculinity itself is toxic.
I think, and I just chew on, maybe just think about this for a minute. I think the reason why that you may not hear positive things about masculinity is because we've always seen masculinity um, as um, the the standard.
Yeah,
We've always seen it's a man's world to begin with. Do you know what I mean? It's not a woman's world; it's a man's world.
yeah,
So we don't really like, and it's not really particularly necessary to be like, well, here are the positive aspects of masculinity, because it's everywhere, and because it just happens. It's like being another like, I just pull this back to race, but it's like someone saying, um you know well, how come you don't want to have any white dolls in let's say a business owner decides, like, I'm only going to have black dolls in my establishment,
mhm,
and a customer says, well, how come you don't have any white dolls in here? This is not fair. This isn't a positive reinforcement. And that's because white dolls are the standard. If you look at our iPhones, even as an example, my iPhone anyway, or normal iPhones, Apple products, the emojis, the standard is a yellow hand, which is really, or a yellow um, colored
yeah,
caricature, which is just to say, like, it is the normal, it is the standard, it is the regular, which really means it's the positive. And it wasn't until later that like people started to be like, oh shit, like you should put in like other little graphics, not graphics, but other emojis that have diversity in them so that we can say like, oh, there, you know, there are other things there. We don't really need to, we don't really need to highlight additional emojis of that are yellow or white. You know what I mean? So um, I do think though that something that you're saying is probably good in that it's like Gen Z
Mhm.
and all of the future generations that come after us. I don't. I can kind of see, for example, when a lot of like white there's a lot of white people, for example, who say things like I don't want my child to be walking around with this guilt of like thinking that they've got all this white privilege and they've enslaved black people when that's not been their history anyway, or whatever it is. Or for as an example, you're saying with with masculinity and how it's been labeled as like toxic now. um you don't want the future of men, you don't want our future men thinking that like it's a crime to be masculine, you know and as they grow up they're going to hear this narrative of like reduce your masculinity, or like be softer in a room, be more polite, don't be so apprehensive to things. And yeah, there's a part of me that realizes that there is some truth to that. So I'm not like I'm not completely dismissing you here,
Yeah.
but I do think it's a little bit of a boo-hoo at the moment. So forgive me, but yeah, I think there's a balance. I don't actually think we need to openly affirm
Mhm.
um, what already is a standard,
Yeah.
because it's a sub it's even like a subconscious narrative. It's if it's just it's not something you even have to think about. And if it's not anything you have to think about, it must be positive. It's just a way of life. It's a norm. um
I think
that's
the
my two
ironic
cents
part of
with it.
the whole thing too is, you're basically telling men to stop behaving in a way that society rewards them for behaving. Because if you look at like professionally, what gets rewarded if you're a man? Like the behaving in a way that's defined as masculine, largely toxic masculinity too. Like a lot, like being uber competitive, being like uber confident. These are the things that get you rewarded as a man in the workplace, and in the
Yes.
and in the dating world too. So it's like if you're telling men to stop behaving in a way that society and romantically they're being rewarded for, it's always going to be a fool's errand. Like I don't know how you're ever going to expect men to stop behaving in a way that they're being rewarded for. Like you'll be shamed publicly if you cross a line, but you never
Mm.
know where exactly the line will be. But up until that line, you're going to always be rewarded.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I think to a degree that's also confusing, because it's like, what do you do? Um,
It's very
and I hear that. Um,
because I'll give you just a really quick example. Um,
uh-huh.
for from about puberty up until about late 20s, I was what you would define as like the textbook nice guy. Like I was never like you were never gonna ever feel like threatened that I would make you uncomfortable. And I wasn't super competitive, none of that stuff. Wasn't really as confident as I should have been either. But anyway, that's kind of how I was, and I was kind of friend zoned basically by pretty much most women. And then around like age 30, that kind of changed a little bit because I don't know, I don't know, I was hitting on a girl one time and I just kind of was like, I said something that I thought was rude and offensive. But instead of like her reacting like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that, or negatively, she reacted positively and rewarded me with physical activities. So then I kind of realized like, wait a minute, if I treat women this way, they reward me with this thing that I've been trying to figure out how to get this whole time. And then it just seemed kind of weird. It was like encouraging me to kind of behave in a way that I didn't feel was right, but it was what got the results that we're kind of trained to go after. And then it's like that can be a tricky dynamic to get yourself out of.
Let me ask you something. You still with that person?
Oh God, no! This was like 10 years ago.
Yeah. The likelihood is in a successful relationship, that's not going to have, you're not going to have a successful, healthy relationship,
That's true.
whether that's platonic or romantic. You're not going to have one that's in balance like that, where, I remember those books, my husband read those books, like How to Get a Girl and How to Be Slick with That. There was a whole thing that, it was that college prep boy. Do you remember? I
Yeah,
forgot his name.
I
I
know.
watched, who I'm talking about? He wrote that book and he had all these,
Didn't he get like
uh,
banned from a bunch of countries eventually? Because they
what?
didn't he get banned from some countries eventually because they said he was basically teaching guys how to sexually assault women.
I don't know, but he might have.
If it's the same
I
guy I'm
watched
thinking of,
him. I watched him recently on Impact Theory, and he's changed his whole life. He's a really interesting dude. But it was amazing to hear his perspective and him be like, you know what, I messed up. Like, I wrote that in a period of my life where, like, I could get things handed to me because I was hot, white, and the best. I thought I was the best at everything, and it got me places. And to a degree, it still does, that level of confidence and that sort of arrogance. But he
yeah,
wrote things in there, like he talks about like things like the negs. They're called negs, and really it's short for like negatives. So basically, you tell a girl negative things, and you can keep, they'll keep coming to you. And I agree that to a degree, that's true. That is true. Because it's kind of like the cycle of abuse,
yeah,
and further, the cycle of bullying. And if you can get on the good side of a bully, where a bully likes you,
hmm,
you're safe, you're protected, you also win. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, it's all about power. So to a degree, like I same similar thing happened with me and my husband. I give my husband as an example because he's read these books, which is hilarious, but he's read these books
yeah.
and still ashamed to, to talk about it with me, but like he's read these books and
There's no shame in it.
oh, there's no shame in
Well,
it. I
I don't
love you.
mean like what the guy does. I'm just saying like when you're young, you're trying to figure out like how to,
How to work,
you don't know
how
how
to
to
do
talk to
these things.
girls. Like you don't know how to, like you see people in relationships like how the hell does that happen? That's not happening with me. So you try to read up on like how to make it happen, and then
Right,
hopefully you
right.
follow that advice. But the craziest part is it does well. It's not going to get you in a healthy relationship. It will get you laid, and it will get you laid, but it will not get you in a happy relationship. But
Correct. And you won't be happy. You won't be happy with that person. Honestly, you won't be, because eventually you'll realize, like, um, if that person is so weak minded to continue to be with me, why do I like, what do I like about her?
exactly,
And it will eventually eat you up inside too.
yeah.
Um, but I think on one of our, like our third date, my husband was so nice, so charismatic, so diplomatic, but then he would do this like young boy thing, which is what I call it. I called it at the time. I said, "Oh, look at him! He's doing his little young boy thing where he's like, I don't like you, I like you, you know." But really, he had read these like neg books, right? These books, and he was using the shit on me, and I'm like, oh, look at him being a little young boy, I'm so mature, I understand what he's doing, blah blah. He said something to me like, I think it was like our third date, and we were shopping, I was trying on clothes,
Mhm.
and no man has ever, I've never been on a date and a man has been like, I don't like something about you, or, you know what I mean? They've always been super positive, super like affirming,
Yep.
always treated me really nice, you know? So it was the first time ever that a man had said something disapproving. He said, um, can you fix your posture in
Oh,
that dress?
oh shit. Wow.
It's just he's like, it just doesn't look good. Didn't you take ballet for years?
Oh shit.
And the way he said it, it was like, yeah, I have taken ballet. Yeah, I should fix my posture. Like, yeah, oh my gosh, like no one's ever said, no one's watched out for me, you know, and said something like that. And also like, wow, he just said the truth, you know, and he said it in a little bit of a like a, you know, he was ballsy, and he said to me like what he thought, and that's attractive. And then like, ooh, it was negative, and you know, um I like that because it's different, and oh, I want to get on his good side, and prove to him that I can, you know, sit with my back tall, and you know, walk around with my back, you know, with my back erect, and the whole thing, you know. So
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the power.
Yeah.
It was the balance, and that's part of this sort of toxic masculine. I think also the reason why it's got this title of toxic is because it seems to be infiltrated everywhere, and in these little tiny sneaky ways where you don't realize what it is. Here I was, as mature as I was, I just had gotten out of a 6-year abusive, emotionally abusive relationship, and
Yeah.
here I was with a guy doing negs on me, and I had no idea, you know. I
Yeah.
had no idea, and I thought it was cute. I thought he was doing a little boy thing, and you know, but it was terrible. You know, when I look back on it, I'm just like, I can't believe you did that, you son of a bitch. You know, and I still, like, I should have taken that as a sign and been like, wow, he needs to work on some shit. You know, like I need to talk to him and tell him that's not the way you treat women on a third date,
No.
but I didn't, right? So why I think it's toxic is it's because of how sinister it's gotten. It's gotten in the it's infiltrated masculinity, in a negative way. It has infiltrated in these very sort of subtle,
Mhm.
quiet, and unexpected ways where you're not able to recognize it for what it is, or even say what it is, because it doesn't look like that. It just looks like it couldn't be that, because the standard is something positive, so it could never be negative.
Yeah. I understand that. Yeah.
But I could go on about this shit because and let it be known, I'm not a feminist.
Oh
And
wow.
I no, I'm not a feminist, and I, I don't like saying also too, I usually don't like talking about like, you know, these types of issues, because I feel like the people who declare themselves as feminists
Mhm.
do a lot of research, have a lot of knowledge. They're really like, um, you know, dismissive kind of too about gender norms and gender roles. And there are some things, you know, in a lot of ways, I'm conservative,
Yeah.
and not that kind of conservative, but I'd say like probably a bit more socially conservative, and maybe wait, socially democrat, socially liberal,
Yeah.
all right, and maybe fiscally a bit more conservative. But um but when it comes to gender norms and issues between sex, I'm a bit more, not rigid, but old fashioned, in that like, okay, like I I've always thought that a man does that and a woman does that. Am I I still believe in equality in
Yeah.
partnership, for example, but I
Mhm.
do think the way in which we are equal may have a different, you know, they may be different. It's just different.
Yeah.
Just
So
you know, yeah.
one of the interesting parts of this whole attack on toxic masculinity is I don't even want to say it's the majority of feminists because I don't think it probably is, but it's certainly like a significant element of like the feminist movement has like branded or defined. I believe the sexual assault is the definition. Like they've kind of defined sexual assault in a way to where like if if you go out on a date and your boyfriend, well, not your boyfriend, but the guy you're on a date with goes to kiss you, make a move at the end of the date, you know, and he doesn't ask your permission first, they consider that now sexual assault. Like there are some that's kind of like a growing thing, and I'm like, it's kind of weird because I, as like a 17, 18, 19-year-old man, was thinking, well, it's just kind of rude of me to go in for a move on this girl. Like I should probably ask her like if it's okay. But then I actually had women tell me that that was weak and they didn't like that. They're like, no, just go for a move or just go for the kiss. If I don't want to kiss you, I'll let you know. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm not supposed to ask because what I was told by women. But now it's like 20 years later, you have this growing movement kind of telling boys that if you don't ask a woman like for her permission to make any kind of move sexually, like that just seemed weird to me because I'm like, I couldn't imagine like in the middle of like foreplay being like, hey, is it okay if I do this with my hand? Or it's like usually my experience has been you kind of just slowly move your hand and they will put their hand on your hand if they don't want you to do that. And then you stop. Or I guess maybe some people don't stop and then proceed to be creeps like Harvey Weinstein or something. But yeah, that's kind of weird for me because I'm like, man, I couldn't imagine navigating that world. Like, hey, is it okay if I give you a kiss goodnight?
Yeah, I think that I think that's really hard. I really do. And I hear you on that, and I have a lot of sympathy.
Have you had a guy ask if he could kiss you before he tried to kiss you for the first time?
No, no. And honestly, for me, if a man said, "Can I kiss you?" I would feel like, "Oh my God, that's so sweet," because I'm a talker, right?
Yeah.
So if a man said to me like, "Can I kiss you?" I would feel like they were considering me, they valued me. This is a nice little conversation. I get to write about this in my journal type of thing, you
Okay.
know? And it's a lovely sort of thing, but also I'm so used to, I think what it
Mm.
is again that toxic masculinity thing is women are so used to being taken.
Yeah.
So we're used to being hunted and and taken because we're prized. We finally are being caught. So if you decide you want to kiss me, yeah, it's like I should just give over to you. I shouldn't also say no.
Oh,
And I think this is why, like, there's that whole thing about like, um, I think that's the reason why there's this whole thing also too about women saying no. They feel like, in, in a lot of in a lot of respects, as you've heard, I'm sure by many people and by many men, um, or just in the, it's like, no means yes, yes means no type of thing. I'm
uh,
sure you've heard that, right?
I've been there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You see, or like a woman is just confused, or you know what I mean, or like, oh, she's playing hard to get, or you know, no, there's no way that she could say no, and if she does say no, it's like it's super awkward between you and her, for example. And there's also too like this whole thing about oh, I had it. It's like women were never really you don't really say no as a woman. You know what I mean? you always say yes or figure it out or find a possibility, or um you're always nice, you're always demure, you're always, that's an old fashioned narrative, but like it still is kind of consciously like in our, it's a big thing for women now and during the feminist movement to be like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I have a voice. I can say no, I think a lot of people, a lot of women in the past were just kind of like taken and raped, even in their relationships. And currently, like women are just used to like, okay, my husband wants to have sex now. I get, this isn't for my pleasure. This is for him. And, or like, if I don't want to have sex, that's not a, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not a, that I can't say no to my husband. There's this whole thing about
I definitely know what
saying,
you're saying because I've heard a frightening amount of female friends of mine describe sexual encounters they've had with men they didn't want to have sex with. And the reason, and I was always kind of just shocked by that, like, why would you sleep with somebody you don't want to have sex with? Like, I would never do something like that. And they said that basically they just don't know how to say no, and it's easier just to sleep with the guy than to say no. And then, if you've watched any of this stuff with like Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein and some of these people, like a shocking amount of these women, like they've never actually been threatened. It was just they thought if they said no, there was already like a perceived threat there, even though like these guys didn't necessarily have to threaten them. They would just like expose themselves and be like, "Hey, I want you to do this," and the girl would like get scared, like, "What's going to happen to me if I say no?" And then just do it.
yeah,
And I'm like, "Wow, that's crazy." Because
yeah,
then it kind of makes me
that,
think about my experiences. Like, man, I hope I never made a girl feel like that. Like, that's just creepy.
yeah. I mean, I've been in a situation too where I've said no. I've been like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. And then I'll feel bad because I realized I put myself in a situation which is like, what did I expect him to do? Which is even worse that I say that, like, what would I expect him to do? Because it's like, I don't know, act like a human being and, control your own urges if I say no, But I said to myself, well, here I am. I put myself in this situation, which is a really uncomfortable thing. Do I know where the door is? His roommate is home. I could scream if I don't, And I just said, you know what? I convinced myself after repeatedly saying no and repeatedly like, no, I don't want to. No, I don't know you. No, I don't feel comfortable. I just said, uh, it's like, it's late. Maybe I'll like it,
Oh
you
shit.
know.
Yeah.
You know, it'll be easier because like I won't feel embarrassed. He won't be embarrassed when we go home. Nothing weird will happen. Like he won't want to like I don't know, maybe he'll like overpower me, even though I knew he couldn't necessarily overpower me because he was like at the time he was like so skinny. But and but I was still kind of just like same. It'd just be easier for me to just do this.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll like it, and the other thing is too, we're so used to disseminating terrible situations. We're so used to pleasing other people, being really diplomatic or being really like careful so as not to rock the boat, just constantly, make things easy for somebody else, that I think and that's naturally because we're nurturers, women are nurturers.
Yeah.
um I just did it, and man, it wasn't it was fine. I didn't enjoy myself that much, you know what I'm saying, and I left feeling like disgusting, more so with the fact that I just couldn't, at my age at the time, just be like, no, I don't want to do that, and walk the fuck out of there, and not blame myself for him pressuring me and him putting me in that situation,
Yeah.
and you know me realizing that I was in a situation in which didn't need to be like that. Like it didn't need to end up like that. Even if it was a situation, it didn't need to end up like that. and there was nobody, I should never have blamed myself for that. But it's easy not to, right? It's just that thing the toxicity of it is so sinister. You don't understand how it gets in, but it already gets in, and it's like it's just because it's always been there, and it's always been present.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. I've done it
yeah.
2, maybe 3 times. It's a very weird feeling when you realize, like, I just had sex with somebody just so I wouldn't have to tell them I didn't want to have sex with them. Like, because I chose that over telling them that I didn't want to have sex with them because I was worried about hurting their feelings. So I gave them access to my body because I didn't want to hurt their feelings. What the hell's wrong with me?
Yeah.
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 Luckily, I have not done that
Yeah.
in a long time, but yeah, I've done that a couple of times.
Wow.
I was just like, oh,
Okay.
because I didn't know how to tell somebody, like, no, I don't want to sleep. Or actually, like, I didn't even think I was allowed to as a guy. Because I'm like, as a guy,
Wow.
like, you're kind of just trained to, like, see sex as the goal. And then it's like when it's presented to you, you're like, I don't really want this, but if I turn this down, is that kind of like, it's just like an unmanly thing to do, which is probably toxic masculinity.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But for fuck's sake, I feel you. One of my brothers, like, my one of my brothers in particular, he's like a just a real nice guy. He reminds me kind of how you described yourself early on, where you're just like a nice dude, and like caring, respects women, loves his mom. You know what I'm saying? Someone who loves his mom, loves his parents, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
loves his sisters. And so he has the utmost respect for people. Um, and he is in part of that Gen Z, generation where they spend most of their times like on social media. And that's really their whole world of dating. And he's a handsome looking dude.
Yeah.
But he's got that hipster look, you know what I mean? So that's in,
Mhm. Yeah.
but he's not a rapper, and he's not talking about, fucking that bitch, and you know what I mean? And he's not doing any of that. He dare I say, he's kind of got a European thing, in that, like, he crosses his legs when he sits. Do you know what I'm saying? Which is looked at as a bit like, oh,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, that's not really masculine to do that,
I really
you
want to
know?
see famous guys do that. I don't
But
know
he's
why. Maybe
comfortable
actors
with,
don't.
yeah, I think in part, lots of artists, right? Like they're usually a bit more comfortable with their sexuality and who they are, that they don't feel the need to sort of project what they are.
Yeah.
But he's a young guy, and with that you carry insecurities, right? And his road to dating has been so hard,
Yeah.
and I see it. He's just so nice. He's almost like too nice.
Oh God, how many times have I
And
been told that? Oh.
and and it's like, I just want to say to him, like, treat her like shit. Treat
Yeah.
her like shit
It'll work.
and see what happens,
Yeah.
you know? And I won't say that, because I'm just like, that's wrong. Because at the end of the day, you will find someone who's on your same sort of vibe, and meaning like someone who's mature enough to be with your maturity, and you'll get each other,
Hmm.
and it'll be right. But those are hard to come by.
Yeah.
But if you are like that, you are like that, you know?
My advice to your
Um,
brother would be not to treat girls like crap, because that's not the trick. The real trick is to be confident about why she should be with you. Because girls are ultimately drawn
oh,
their girls are ultimately drawn to confidence. You don't have to
yes.
necessarily treat them bad; they're drawn to confidence. But nice guys tend not to be confident because it's kind of seen as, like, I don't know. It's really hard to be really nice and really confident, because confident people tend to be kind of arrogant, self-centered people who are not really nice people. Um, but you got to be confident about who you are and confident about why she should be with you, and it'll work. It's a trick I've learned.
I like that.
You just got to be confident.
I like that. On that note, I guess we should sign off.
I guess so. Until next time.
Till next time.